You're not talking about someone who's necessarily very, very sophisticated, who knows exactly what a multifamily syndication, for example, is. But you're also not talking about someone who's never heard of alternative investments either. So where do you think is like the sweet spot for your website? You talked about some education. What level of awareness or knowledge should the average syndicator assume that a visitor might have? Hey, Todd, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
As awesome, we're going to talk all about raising capital online, which is something we haven't done in a while. Very exciting to us. It's very important to have an online presence so that you can raise more and more capital. And you have a lot of experience helping syndicators do that. Tell us a little bit about you and kind of what you guys do at Apartment Investor Pro.
Yeah, so we've been doing websites for real estate investors for about 2 decades now, about 20 years this year, and but for multifamily syndicators for the last 10 years, so a decade of that too. So that means a couple of things. One, I'm getting old, but also I had to learn a few things along the way. And so yeah, we try to help syndicators with that process. The things that sometimes take many months to create and build from scratch. Try to do a lot of that work for people so they can get up and running a lot quicker.
Yeah, let's talk about this. Different elements of having an online presence. How would you kind of describe to a syndicator to have an online presence?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is a website, and that needs to look professional. We just expect businesses today have a website. It's kind of a given that there will be something there. If you Google their name or their company name, something is going to come up. Then also, social media is another important thing too, that, being there wherever people are looking, having some kind of presence there so that that's going to make a good impression too. So like something that's going to stand out and, help them to trust you basically.
Now, most syndicators think that having a website is online presence, and it's certainly a component of that. Talk about some of the other components, because I'd like to drill down on each of these a little bit more. What are some of the other elements of having an online presence, especially for those who want to raise capital online?
Yeah, so it depends on how you want to get in front of people, but it could be all the different social media platforms. You could have your own podcast. You could go on other people's podcasts. There's pay-per-click advertising you can do. You can tap into people searching online, things like that. So all of those are kind of part of your presence. There's even some things happening behind the scenes too. You can have things on your website that people can sign up for, and then they get emails that kind of happen behind the scenes, but it kind of brings them back to your website or brings them back to you in different ways.
Well, I think that's really important. I think a lot of mistakes I see syndicators make is that they hop on someone's podcast, right? And then the host asks them how they connect, and they have some kind of website that no one can remember.
Yeah.
So there's no compelling reason to go there. So how important is it to be able to capture traffic? Like, talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, everything you do there should be a strategy with it. Before you go on a podcast, before you post something on social media, there should be a plan for what comes next. And you kind of need to plan that process through and think it through, because otherwise you're just wasting a lot of time and energy. Otherwise you're sending them to a dead end sometimes. But so like your website should have a way to capture people, something that's going to appeal to them, something they're going to be interested in, that they want to exchange their contact information for, so that and of course then you have a way to follow up with them and kind of start building that relationship.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. So you're going to be able to capture that lead, and also ultimately you want to connect with them somehow, probably via a phone call, and so that's somehow important, using automations and that kind of thing. And then there's content, right? To talk a little bit more about the importance of content.
Yeah, it's critical. That's part of how people come to know you and like you and trust you by the content you're putting out. When you're trying to raise money, you're asking for tens of thousands of dollars at least in investment, and like they're not going to do that with somebody they don't feel like they know pretty well and trust. And so your content can really have a lot to do with that, how much they trust you. You kind of show yourself as an expert or an authority in that, and we all want to work with somebody that knows what they're doing. So the more when you put out that content that shows you teach them something maybe that they didn't know before. Now they can see you as an expert, somebody that they can trust, and so that can go a long way. So there's content that you can put on your website. This content, maybe if you're doing podcasts and things like that, maybe a newsletter. emails, automated emails that follow up with people automatically when they sign up for something. There's a lot of content to think through, but all of that, should have a strategy behind it that's taking them toward the next step.
So there's a lot of components of what I call a marketing platform. We just talked about a whole bunch of them, and just if you're watching, listening to this, there are a lot of components of a platform, and you see that the larger syndicators really invest significant amount of time and money into building out the platform. So, Todd, let's talk about various components. Let's start just kind of with the basics, right? With what people think is a platform, it's like 1/10 of a platform, which is your website. But if it's a valuable entry point, talk about some of the things that are important when you're setting up a website.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of little details, like, where are you directing people's eyes? Like what's drawing their attention? So, like there should be something that stands out on your website that's maybe a different color, or something that's the action you want most people to take. And that should ideally be something that's going to capture their contact information. Again, like a lead magnet, something that that they can get for free in exchange for their contact information. And so that is one thing, is getting them to sign up for that. But then also all the steps that happen after that, how do you maybe what you want is to get them on a call. Well, what needs to happen between those 2 points? How many points of contact are you going to make with them, and how is that going to happen? For example, like through automated emails that are keep pushing them in that direction, maybe educating them, things like that.
All right. One step at a time, Todd. You're putting a lot of stuff out there. So
Okay.
your website, let's go. So what are some of the things that do you want to that you want to see on the website itself? Save the lead magnet for just a second. I want to talk separately about that. But what kind of questions should be answered on the website? What do you like to see on an syndicator's website when someone comes to their website?
Well, one of the things that's really important is having an About Us page, because I find that that's one of the things that people go for first. We've done like heat maps and things to see like where are people clicking, and that's what you want to know a lot of times, is who's on the team, like who is this person I'm dealing with. And so taking some time to put that together, make that, make a good impression. But also on the website, want to have educational content, something for somebody that maybe is brand new to the idea of syndication, about, apartment investing, multifamily. How does the syndication work? Like maybe even define some of the terminology that you're going to be throwing at them. What is a GP? What is, how do these different things fit together? And like, what is their role? Like, what do they have to do? How much of a commitment is there from them? The more you can provide that education in simple terms, like you don't want to overwhelm them either, but just explain some of this so they kind of know what they're getting into. But at the same time, showing the benefits of this, like, there's kind of we make decisions partially emotionally, but then we also want to have logic to back it up. And so having the benefits that they're going to get from this, showing clearly what they're getting out of this and why it's a good investment, but then showing the facts and things that, how it's, has tax advantages and different things like that, to kind of, make them want to learn more about it, basically.
So who do you think the ideal audience is for the website? Because you're talking about a certain level of awareness. You're not talking about someone who's necessarily very, very sophisticated, who knows exactly what a multifamily syndication, for example, is. But you're also not talking about someone who's never heard of alternative investments either. So where do you think is like the sweet spot for your website? You talked about some education. What level of awareness or knowledge the average syndicator assume that a visitor might have?
I mean, I don't think you want to assume too much. You should have something there for a broad range. I think some of it depends maybe too on who you're targeting. I mean, if you're targeting an audience that already has some familiarity, then maybe not get into maybe a little bit more advanced stuff. But if you're going after somebody that maybe doesn't have that experience, maybe they're coming from you're targeting doctors, for example, and this is all brand new to them. Well, then you might want to go into a little bit more detail. So I know one thing I've seen some people do is have like a learn section or like a blog on their website with articles, and maybe have them at different levels. Like here's some 101 type stuff, like basics, and then here's some more advanced things like that. So, but if you are targeting a specific audience, then you can kind of gear your content toward that. But if you are going after a little bit broader range, I would say have a little bit of something for everybody, that depending on where they're at right now. Ideally, your content that you're providing is going to provide more of that education. If your emails and things like that, but yeah, I think you need to have a little bit of something for everybody, depending on what level they're at, unless you are really super targeted with your audience. Yeah.
All right, so you got a great website, cost a couple grand to set up, or a little bit more. You got a nice website, and then at the bottom there's a, subscribe to my newsletter form, right? Why is that a really bad idea?
Yeah, because like who needs more email? Like I don't ever think, oh, my inbox is empty. I need to sign up for some newsletters. It just isn't something that anybody cares about. It's like, what's the value to me, like for being on your newsletter? Like there's really, I don't see much value in that. So so yeah, you want to have something that yeah, you want people on your newsletter, you want them on your list, but that's not where you're going to lead with. That's not where you're going to typically offer because yeah, just who wants more email?
Todd, what's the solution?
So having a what we call a lead magnet, which is something that you can give away for free that people will want, something that's going to provide value to them. It should have a high perceived value, should have a high actual value, should teach them something. Um, one mistake I see sometimes people make with that is they think, well, I need to write a book, and so they'll put like a book. Here's an ebook that I wrote. Now, ebooks are good for credibility because it shows that okay, you authored this book, but I don't think it's great as a lead magnet. Not something for like a cold audience that somebody that doesn't really know you. Because like I wouldn't walk up to somebody on the street and say, hey, I wrote a book. You should read it. Because like who's gonna read it? It's a big commitment to ask somebody to read a book. And so lead magnets usually should be something easily consumable within like 5 or 10 minutes. It should have um, some real value, something significant. So it's a lot of times things like white papers, cheat sheets, checklists, different things like that tend to make a better lead magnet. Once somebody knows you and they've consumed some of your content, then a book might be a good place to kind of build that relationship, kind of nurture it and help them, help move them forward. But personally, I don't think it's a great place to start. And the same as like a newsletter isn't a great place to, isn't really a lead magnet either. It's like, yeah, it's good for you, but what's in it for me?
All right, so how do you come up with a good lead magnet, right? So what's kind of the process, and maybe use an example.
Yeah, and I think some of that is also going to depend on who you're targeting, because if you're targeting people that already have a lot of familiarity with this and they already know what multifamily syndication is and all that, then maybe it would be something that, like how to vet a sponsor kind of thing, like something a little bit more advanced. But if you're targeting somebody that has no exposure to this, I would say starting from the basics, why is multifamily a good investment? And kind of go through some of those things that people might not be aware of, some of the different benefits of investing. And so yeah, something that's like they can read through it pretty quickly, get some information that they didn't know before, and also be motivated to take that next step. It should have, a call to action too for like whatever it is you want them to do next. In that, so that it's clear for them if they like it, they like what they're reading, they know what the next step is for them to move forward.
What is a typical good next step when someone downloads a lead magnet?
Yeah, so there's different ways you could do it, but like one thing I think would be it would be like to fill out a form that's a little bit asking more than just their name and email. But now that they're a little bit more motivated, maybe ask some details about like what are they looking for in an investment. Just a little investor profile kind of form, like something that shows like are they accredited, like how much would they like to invest, that kind of thing. Kind of taking the relationship forward. It's a little bit more of a commitment. You wouldn't want to ask for that to a stranger, but now that they're getting to know you, they're warmed up a little bit, and they're a little bit more excited, they might be more like willing to give a little bit more information. Some people might prefer to go straight into booking a call. I think it kind of depends on your approach, but yeah, that's kind of where I would take somebody there, and then you kind of know where they're at and how good of a lead this is, and then you could even, yeah, you can, but basically, I mean, you could even serve as a qualifier to see if you want to try to take things farther with them or yet anyway, if you want to do that.
Ultimately, you want them to invest, right? So it's all starts with some kind of lead traffic or wherever that comes from, a podcast or something like that, and then downloading this lead magnet. But there's a long road to go between, getting essentially what's now a cold lead and someone who's an investor. You talked about filling out a form, booking a call. What are some of those things that need to happen between that download and someone investing? What are all those things that could happen or should happen?
Yeah, so just kind of a general idea, like the flow you'd want them to have is like maybe they sign up to the lead magnet, then maybe you have them fill out that form, give you more information. Maybe next you would want them to book a call. And then you find out on that call, like how good of a lead is this? Is this somebody I want to show deals to? Maybe put them in a different place so that then when there is a deal, you can target them and show them the deal and kind of move them along in that process. But along each of those steps, like people typically aren't going to just go to the next step immediately. Like they're going to sign up for the lead magnet, but they're not going to fill out the form. So you need to have stuff in place for when that happens. Like, okay, they've signed up. Okay, now they're going to get this series of emails that follows up with them until they take the action that you want them to take. And kind of each step along the way, like have those kind of things in place. Have emails that are going out to them. It could be text too. That kind of move them toward that next step that you want them to take. And of course, yeah, go ahead.
So you have 100 people downloading lead, maybe 200 people and 300 people, and you're saying you should be emailing them and getting them to do the next thing. It seems like a lot of work to have to do that.
Yeah, if you're doing it all
manually, do all that work.
Right. Yeah. If you had to do it all manually, it just isn't going to happen. Like you're going to forget, something's going to fall through the cracks. So that's where like a good CRM or, email marketing system can do a lot of that for you. You can set up automations. So you can figure out, okay, what do I need to send them in what order to get them to take the next step? And then write those emails, get them put into a system so that when you add a new contact, they're automatically going to get that series of emails that some people call it a nurture series. Like you're kind of nurturing that lead, warming them up, building that relationship, getting them to take the next step. And just all along the way, you should have stuff like that in place that keeps them moving. Because if you're depending on your memory to do it, like it's just not going to happen. Or if you're, yeah. And then if you don't plan it out and have a process for it, it's not going to happen either. And people are definitely going to fall through the cracks.
So this automation situation is very important, obviously. What we found is that more recently in this new environment takes a lot more, I guess, interactions via like a phone call or via a direct Zoom. Are you seeing any of that right now in the market just to get people's attention? Or if not, what else are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that's good to do. I think human interaction, like one thing that I think some of the trends things are going, like more and more stuff is going to AI and there's all these automated things, but the more that's happening, the more people want the human touch. Like I think the more you can, include that wherever possible, having that human interaction is going to go a long ways because we all get kind of annoyed by all the, chat bots and like automated voicemail, messaging systems where you're stuck in a loop of, AI. And so dealing with an actual human, I think wherever you can fit that in, I mean, wherever you can realistically fit it in, but making sure it gets done consistently too. But if you can make that happen, I think and I think maybe knowing the right touch points, like knowing when to do that so that maybe a brand new lead comes in and like, until you kind of, maybe if you have some like ways to pre-qualify them a little bit so you can kind of know, okay, this is a good lead. I need to put this in my system to call them. So things like that, I think could be, yeah, really, really good.
What are some of the best ways to pre-qualify people that you implement?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it depends on the stage, but like I would say, like for example, like maybe if if you have a minimum investment, for example, like making sure they have that amount, or maybe if you're only doing certain kinds of deals, like asking some questions up front. One thing, if you're, for example, if you're doing pay-per-click ads, you can add, like let's just say Facebook ads, for example, you can add, instead of just like asking for name and email, you can ask for another question or two that kind of pre-qualifies them, like just to make sure that they are somebody that you want to follow up with, make sure they're worth paying for as a lead and putting into your system, because it does take time and effort to follow up with each of these people. And so having and I think maybe it's going to be a little different for each person, but I mean, I think finding out their criteria, like what are they looking for, and making sure it aligns with what you're offering, and then simplifying that as much as possible. Like how can I ask this in the simplest way to make sure, like for example, are you looking to invest this year? Well, if they're not, then this is somebody that's not really not too serious. They're maybe like down the road, like maybe they'd be good to put on your list, but not like, maybe you don't need to call them immediately.
Talk about the importance of content. I know there's a lot of syndicators are looking for the easy button. especially online. There's people that teach, hey, just do this thing online and you'll raise millions in days, right? And it's never been my experience, or actually our students, it's much more involved. You have to invest time and money into building this platform that you just described. But also, once that's done, not only do you have to now invest in lead generation efforts, but also content. So talk about what level of commitment that you're seeing that's really required to kind of build trust with investors. Like, is it something, an email you put out once a month or once a quarter? Is it, what do you see that's working?
Hmm. Yeah, I think some depends on what the people expect, and what they want, because you don't want to be too overboard and like annoy people, but you also don't want to do so infrequently that they forget who you are. So finding that sweet spot, and you can kind of judge some of that by how people respond, how much engagement you get with the emails and things. But for example, if you're sending out emails pretty often, you see a lot of people are unsubscribing. Well, maybe it's a bit too often, but if you're getting responses and people are engaged, then like that's great. Keep up. But yeah, it's a commitment to create content, because you do want to stay in touch with people. Like, you want them to remember who you are, and when you first come in contact with them, they might not be ready to invest, but at the point when they are ready to invest, you want to be the top of their mind. You want to be the one that they're thinking of. So if they have an email from you in their inbox, then you're the one that they're gonna go to for that. So I think you have to kind of judge it based on your audience and how they respond. But I think frequent communication is good, and you can always tone it back if you need to. But like, keeping in touch as much as you can keep up with it. That's the other thing. Like, you want to do it consistently. So if you can't keep up with a weekly email, then do whatever you can do consistently, so that people know what to expect from you. And they know, okay, it's time. I'm going to hear from them on this frequency. So yeah.
Now, you mentioned AI earlier. You got to ask the question with anything. What role does or should AI play in what we're talking about? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great tool. It can save you a lot of time and money, but you have to use it strategically, because you do want to maintain your brand voice. You want investors to have a positive experience. I've found with AI, it tends to pay. It pays to pay for the premium versions a lot of times and train it. Just for example, like ChatGPT is one that a lot of people know, and if you pay for it, you can actually train a GPT on your company specifically. You can upload documents about your brand voice. You can tell it all about your company, so that when it's writing, and you can tell it the style you want to write in and everything like that too. So I think it can help a lot with content creation, like blog posts, newsletters. But just a few things, like always fact check, because sometimes it just makes stuff up. Sometimes it gets details wrong. Sometimes it will make up quotes that nobody ever said. It'll create fake testimonials. So just be careful with it. Don't just copy and paste and just send it. You want to, it still needs the other AI, which is actual intelligence, to make it effective. Like, you've got to put your own brain into it and kind of check it out first. But there's a lot of really cool things you can do with it. I mean, you can tell it to role play. You can, say you're a passive investor and I'm an apartment syndicator. I'd like you to invest with me, and then go back and forth with it, ask it questions, see like, what are some objections that you have, and what are some concerns you might have, and like, you can learn from it that way and kind of learn how to even overcome those objections. Or maybe you have to write a difficult email. Your property manager's sending you a message and they're overreacting to something that sounds kind of demanding. You want to reply in a way that addresses it, but also puts them in their place a little bit in a kind way. So you can tell ChatGPT how to do that, and then tell it the tone you want to go for, all of that kind of stuff. It can help as sort of a filter, between like what you want to say and what you actually end up sending. So it's funny, but you can actually use AI to help you sound more human sometimes, be more empathetic or be more friendly. So yeah, there's benefits to it, but definitely you want to use it wisely. Definitely always edit the content before it goes out. Don't overdo it, and yeah, use it cautious, or use it wisely, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah.
That's one of the things, again, that people are looking for the easy button, and then it just produces a bunch of garbage sometimes. And
Right.
a human eyeball could have caught some of these things. But yes, I mean, I think we're all constantly looking for ways to leverage AI because it makes us more productive. And so I like your idea about role playing with a passive investor. I think that's a fantastic idea. Now, we did talk a lot about, and I know for this show, you actually prepared something that people can download to kind of talk about all these things we talked about. Talk a little bit more about that and how people can get it.
Yeah, so we talked about the process you need to take people through from start to finish, and so it can take a lot of time to actually map that all out and figure out like what needs to happen in each of these stages. So yeah, so we've actually got a blueprint that it is all fully mapped out. Actually, I've got a printout up here if anybody is watching, but it's the full process, from start to finish. Kind of show you like what you need to have at each of those steps to keep people moving forward and kind of what that process would look like. Of course, it's something you might tweak a little bit to make it your own, but something that I think will save hours and hours of time, probably even thousands of dollars over, maybe hiring a marketing firm to help you create this. So yeah, the listeners can get that at apartmentinvestorpro.com/MB, like Michael Blanc.
Yeah, that's awesome. So check that out. Check out Todd's blueprint. It's apartmentinvestorpro/MB. And on that page, you can also find out more about what his company, Apartment Investor Pro, does about helping you establish an online presence and generate leads and that kind of nature. So working with Todd for years. So check him out and make sure that you put online marketing in your toolbox as well. So Apartment Investor Pro, any other way that you want people to connect with you, Todd?
No, that's fine. Through our website, that'd be great. And they can find everything else. Like if somebody wants to book a call or anything, send us a message. All of that's right there. So, yeah.
Awesome. This is great, Todd. Thank you for shining a light on the marketing platform, all the components of that. So definitely check that out and educate yourself so that you can actually scale your capital raise. So Todd, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.